seen you on TikTok, huh?
What you talking about? I want to make sure we're talking about the same dude. He's kind of cute though, right?
Oh, I don't know about that. I've never seen him, I don't think. Must be a different guy for sure.
Yeah, definitely a different guy then. People talk a lot about, you know, before we die, we got to get right with God. How do we get right with God, you think?
I probably had that same question to myself a lot as far as getting right with God. I don't see how you technically get right with him as he forgives everybody.
Really quickly, I want to pause. I'll be honest, I messed up here. I should have corrected this guy when he said everybody is saved, because this is an idea called universalism in which every single person is saved because of what Jesus did on the cross, and this is just not true. We look at John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one only son, that whoever would believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. If we keep reading to verse 18, it says, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. I don't think that there's anything we can do to get right with God. All our works, everything we try to do is like filthy rags in comparison to what God's deserving. No matter how hard we try, we'll never be able to get right with God. That's why Jesus had to come. You know what I mean?
Didn't look at it from the right.
When we trust in Jesus as Lord and Savior, we have peace with God. Like what we deserve is punishment and wrath from God, right? But that's what Jesus did. He gave us peace with God. He took on the punishment we deserve so that we could be right with God, which is the best gift, because we never could have gotten right with God, and Jesus is the way.
How long have you been doing this?
I shared Jesus on Warzone for the first time a little bit less than a year ago. We were 11 months and like a week in.
You get like a lot of people like, man, what's this guy doing?
Not really. Like, surprisingly, I think a lot of people, because the way in which I approach each conversation is simply that of a conversation.
Yeah.
And not like, not trying to judge anyone, but rather just genuinely wanting to know what people believe. And I feel like people kind of hear that in my voice. So like, hey, like whatever you believe, I can't control that, right? I'll disagree with you. I'll tell you, I'll do my best to tell you what I believe in truth, but also in a loving way. Whenever a conversation turns into an argument, I close it down real quick because it's just not worth it at that point.
That's always really interesting to me, because like there's a lot, and I'm sure you see it a lot too, like there's a lot of people who don't think that you can disagree and still be courteous to people. They just are upset.
If one thing I can't do is show people, hey, you can have disagreements and still have an amazing conversation and walk away going, yo, I really appreciate that conversation because you asked questions of me that made me think, and you know, vice versa. That's one of the things I'd love to do, is show people like, hey, we can have disagreements and end the conversation with a, hey, I really appreciate that conversation. You know what I mean? Especially in today's age, because everyone's, you know, so scared of getting offended for some reason.
A lot of young people, I feel like. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 24.
So, and that's, I don't mean to say like that's young or anything, because
Call me young.
I feel like I'm old. I'm 37, so I'm old, but it's like the evolution of how everybody is raised is a little bit differently, because there's so much social media that you just can't turn off. There's a lot less instilling of beliefs than what there used to be. It's like, hey, you're on your own to figure it out on social media. Have fun.
Yeah, and a lot of the time on social media, you get, the way social media works is it gives you what you want to hear, so you'll never hear the opposite opinion.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
It's going to give you...
It's completely catered to you.
Yep, 100%. That's a massive problem, is like, we're not actually having conversations, and rather you're just getting fed the same belief. Like, one of the things that I try to do in the Christian culture is, in the Christian culture, everyone's like, oh, like, don't listen to people who have disagreeing beliefs with you. I'm like, no, 100% listen to them. Like, let them ask questions. And if you don't know the answer to a question they give you, that's fine. Just go, hey, I don't know, but I'd love to look into that a little bit. The way in which we grow our own faith is if we listen to what other people have to say, accept the challenge, and then go do it on our own. Like, if you truly believe in Jesus, right, he's going to give you an answer basically every single time. Like, you're not going to... He's not going to leave you out to dry like so many people are like afraid of happening.
I think that is super hard for people. I don't know. I absolutely grew up in the church, and everything kind of changed for me when I got a little bit older, and there was the church was a lot older, and so you saw a lot of I guess elders in the church that didn't really understand, you know, why youth was doing what it was doing. and there was a lot of judgment, like a lot. And so it's like, and I know you've heard it, where you see way more judgment in the church than you do outside of the church.
For sure.
And that kind of scarred me for a little while. I would say the church, just certain people you see inside and outside of the church act extremely differently a lot of times. I lost my dad when I was super young, didn't really have parents, and so you're kind of looking for somebody that can make that impression for you, and you go to a church and you're like, oh, no, okay, this is going to be great, and then you see men act completely different outside of church because you're too young. You're not understanding, hey, I shouldn't judge them for what they're doing. That doesn't mean they're not trying to be a good Christian. It still can really tarnish how you see Christians, and so that kind of skewed a lot of things when I was younger, but it's all good now. It's just trying to mature and realize everything, and sometimes it just takes time.
So I guess a question for you is, how do we make sure we don't become the men the church in which the church has failed to be? You know what I mean? Like, how do we become that for our children? That's really
difficult because
stuff.
It's almost like the question earlier, how do you get right with God? It's really difficult because everybody in their own life has their own struggles. It's not like it's going to be a one fit thing. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a universal code for, hey, we're going to make this all better by doing this. Everybody just needs to have respect and try to be the best person they can be. We're not always going to do things the right way. We're always going to fall short. So I don't think there's one thing that we can do to make things better or right.
Do you think we can work in such a way in which we can try to minimize that?
Yeah, I mean, we could, but that doesn't generally happen because, again, everybody just has to try to be the best person they can be, and we always fall short. Somebody might be having issues with drugs or alcohol or porn or something else. You have no clue, and sometimes those things just kind of manifest completely differently, and then the way that people perceive those issues can be different. You know what I mean? The way you perceive an issue can be different than how I do.
Yeah.
I might think something is really, really bad and you might not, or vice versa. I think it's about learning to not judge as much. Man, I'm getting torn up right there.
You're good. So hear me out on this, right? Is one, I think if we were to be in a community of believers, and I know it's a little bit easier when you're single and or don't have a family and stuff, but like being in a community of fellow believers that build each other up and hold each other accountable and are able to help one another in like the messy situations, and like you're saying, not being judgmental. I think if we were to surround ourselves with more believers, then we'll find ourselves in more positions where we'll find believers who have gone through similar things in the past and can help each other out then. Like the word I think of in that is discipleship, of like, hey, someone's gone through a little bit of a thing, God's brought them to the other side, and now can God use you to also bring the next person to the other side? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And kind of what's the verse? I know iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, 100%.
It's an amazing thought. It's like, yes, that's absolutely how we can do that. But is everybody going to do it? It's really tough.
100%. And I guess my vision isn't to radically change the church like right away, big thing, right? But what if we were to be the examples in which it would change? And hear me out. This is why. So Jesus had 12 disciples. They changed the world. Why can't we in our lifetime have the goal of making 12 disciples? And if I were to make 12 disciples in my lifetime that go then and make disciples, we're talking about within 5 to 6 generations of disciple makers, we're talking over, I think the number's over 2 million people who actually follow Jesus. So, like my goal and my dream in life isn't to change the entire church, but rather just to build up 12 disciples that go and make 12 more disciples. Because if that's the case, within probably by the time of 100 years, maybe 150 years, we're talking about 2 million people who want to follow Jesus and like do it like in a way in which it's not judgmental, but rather building people up.
That would definitely be amazing.